Ladies and gentlemen, I am Marlon de Beek, and it is my pleasure to guide you through this evening's proceedings for yet another year. On behalf of the NGC Bocas Lit Fest and One Caribbean Media, I would like to welcome you to the 2018 OCM Bocas Prize Ceremony, a highlight of Trinidad and Tobago's annual literary festival and a much anticipated event in the Caribbean's cultural calendar. So this evening, let's begin with reflecting upon the Caribbean's rich literary canon of which we are all proud. And let us remember a significant contributor to that enormous richness who passed away on the 8th of March this year, the Guyanese writer Wilson Harris. So Wilson died just days before his 97th birthday, and we would like to recognize his important body of work with a reading from his groundbreaking first novel, Palace of the Peacock, written in 1960. Imam Bash, winner of the 2018 Cord Burt Award and a compatriot of Wilson Harris, will deliver the excerpt.
The map of the savannas was a dream. The names Brazil and Guyana were colonial conventions I had known from childhood. I clung to them now, as to a curious, necessary stone and footing, even in my dream, the ground I knew I must not relinquish. They were an actual stage, a presence, however mythical they seemed to the universal and the spiritual eye. They were as close to me as my ribs, the rivers and the flatland, the mountains and the heartland I intimately saw. I could not help cherishing my symbolic map and my bodily prejudice, like a well-known room and house of superstition within which I dwelt. I saw this kingdom of man turned into a colony and battleground of spirit, a priceless, tempting jewel I dreamed I possessed. I pored over the map of the sun my brother had given me. The river of the savannas wound its way far into the distance until it had forgotten the open land. The dense, dreaming jungle and forest emerged. Mariella dwelt above the falls in the forest. I saw the rocks bristling in the legend of the river. On all sides, the falling water boiled and hissed and roared. The rocks in the tide flashed their presentiment in the sun, everlasting courage and other obscure spirits of creation. One's mind was a chaos of sensation, even pleasure, faced by imminent mortal danger. A white fury and foam churned and raced on the black tide that grew golden every now and then, like the crystal memory of sugar. From every quarter, a mindless stream came through the ominous rocks, whose presence served to pit the mad, foaming face. The boat shuddered in an anxious grip, and in a living, streaming hand that issued from the bowels of earth. We stood on the threshold of a precarious standstill. The outboard engine and propeller still revolved and flashed with mental silent horror now that its roar had been drowned in other wilder, unnatural voices whose violent din rose from beneath our feet in the waters. Dawn gave a louder cry at last, human and incredible and clear, and the boat crew sprang to divine attention. They seized every paddle and with immortal effort edged the vessel forward. Our bow pointed to a solid flat stone, unbroken and clear, running far into the river's bank. It looked near, and yet was as far from us as the blue sky from earth. Sharp peaks and broken hillocks grew on its every side, save where we approached. And to lose our course or fail to keep our head signified a crashing stop with a rock boring and gaping open our bottom and side. Every man paddled and sweated and strained towards the stone, and heaven in his heart. The bowman sprang upon the hospitable ground at last, followed by a nimble pair from the crew. Ropes were extended, and we were drawn into a pond and still water between the whirling stream and the river's stone.
Thank you very much, Imam Bash. The NGC Bocas Lit Fest, now in its 8th year, has been expanding, focusing on incorporating all aspects of the literary creation and their sustenance. The dynamic Bocas Lit Fest team is led by Marina Salandi Brown. Please join me in welcoming the founder and director of the NGC Bocas Lit Fest and initiator of the OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature to bring her welcome address.
Good evening, everyone. Better? Thank you. Mr. Gregory Camejo, Group Executive, Corporate Services, One Caribbean Media. Mr. Mark Loquan, President of NGC, the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago. Fellow directors of the Bocas Lit Fest, judges of the OCM Bocas Prize, sponsors, partners from home and abroad, members of the Diplomatic Corps, writers, friends, volunteers, members of the media. Good evening to you all. Another year has passed, and we are gathered once again in this old historic fire station. Many of you have been here before, but for those of you who didn't know, this once used to be Naipaul's, Derek Walcott's theatre, the theatre workshop, the Trinidad. You see, some people didn't know. And then they moved out of here, and they were in Belmont, which is a very creative part of the city, and now they've moved somewhere else. So we're in a very historic building. And we're delighted that it's been preserved, because many of our buildings, as we heard earlier on today, have been destroyed. And there's a new spirit of revitalizing many of these buildings. So every year we come here and we use this, and we're very, very happy to be here next to what will become another historic building next door, the National Library, which is very unique. If you walk around the city, you see it's quite a unique building. So we're very happy to be here in this particular space, this old fire station. This is of course, one of the big nights for us at the NGC Bocas Lit Fest. And the OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature is also in its 8th year, like we are. Back in 2011, when we announced the first winners of the OCM Bocas Prize, here in this very room, at our very, very first festival, we had a hunch that Caribbean literature was about to experience an upsurge of talent. For decades, our writers have punched above their weight. Think of the great names of the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. And in the past 8 years, the lifespan of our festival and this prize, a bold new generation of Caribbean authors have triumphantly mounted the world's literary stage, with an extraordinary diversity of voices, accents, backgrounds, and subjects. Think, too, of the international recognition won by Caribbean-born writers just in the last 8 years: a Man Booker Prize, 4 Forward Prizes for Poetry. Many of you know that this is one of the most coveted prizes for poetry. 3 Wyndham Campbell Prizes, another coveted prize because it's so lucrative. A U.S. National Books Critic Circle Award, a Scotiabank Giller Award, and 2 Rogers Writers Trust Fiction Prizes in Canada. A Griffin Poetry Prize. Now that's a lot. If you add them up, I think we should give all those writers a big round of applause. If you add them up, I think per capita, we must be some of the biggest prize winners. I mean, out of 6 million people, probably we're winning more prizes than anybody else. Yeah. Not that I'm competitive. And these are just the tip of the iceberg. If it needed proving, then consider it proven. Our writers, Caribbean writers, stand in the company of the best literature being written anywhere. Our Caribbean islands may be small dots on the map, but our region is a center of gravity for world literature. At the same time, we know that prizes are not the be-all and end-all of literature. No writer worth his salt or her salt with the primary actually writes with the primary motivation of winning an award. Writers write because they're stories they feel driven to share, histories that have never been told that they feel compelled to tell, voices that have been ignored or silenced, languages whose richness have not been fully explored, truths that no one has yet dared to utter. The true worth of many great books is not immediately apparent, and the enduring reward for any writer is knowing that she has written, or he has written, the best book, the best poem, the best story, or the play that she envisioned, to the full extent of his or her talent and opportunity, and filled a little void of silence in the world. Talent and opportunity Those, plus the unpredictable variable of luck, are what determine what's possible for any writer. Well, there's nothing that we, not even Bocas, can do about luck. You're supposed to laugh at that. Sadly, but there's much that we can do to find and nurture talent and create opportunity. And that's really what the Bocas project is all about. You see, ladies and gentlemen, that Bocas is not merely this festival, even if that's what we're best known for. And we're proud of it, make no mistake, we're very proud of it. And we brag about it all the time. But our original vision for Bocas, which has guided us over the past 8 years, was to develop all areas and all aspects of Caribbean writing and publishing effectively, and to be a literature development agency, not just for Trinidad and Tobago, but the whole Anglophone Caribbean. And that's what we work all year around on, through workshops and reading groups, through our extensive programs in schools, alongside our partners, the 2 Cents Movement, through collaborations with festivals and other organizations that help us to promote our writers internationally. Just last month, we fulfilled the long-held goal to establish our own permanent headquarters with our move to what we're proud to call the Writers' Center at 14 Alcazar Street in St. Clair. As many of you know, because we had our opening reception there the other night. Seems like nights ago. It's a beautiful old bungalow that now serves as an office space for the Bocas Lit Fest and the 2 Cents Movement, alongside the dedicated event space where we can host readings, book launches, workshops, and other activities year-round. The Writers' Center complements the National Library and our excellent branch libraries around the country operated by NALIS as home for literature, and we are thrilled by the possibilities. The Writers' Center also offers a home to another important development of past months, our daring venture into literary publishing through Bacchus Press. As many of you know, Bacchus, the Bacchus imprint began several years ago as a partnership between People Tree Press, whose founder, Jeremy Pointing, and operations manager, Hannah Bannister, are here with us, and also associate editor, Jacob Ross, and Akashic Books, represented tonight by editorial director, Ibrahim Ahmed. Ibrahim's here? Yeah. Jointly, they published 3 Bocas literary anthologies, and all of them were launched at past editions of the NGC Bocas Lit Fest. But all along, the plan was for Bocas to be brought home to the Caribbean. And last year, in 2017, actually just a few months ago, towards the end of last year, that's exactly what happened. We assumed responsibility for the imprint and the objective of publishing writers at home in the Caribbean. And we've now produced 2 additional Bocas anthologies, So Many Islands, which we launched in January, and Thicker Than Water, which we launched just last night. And the next Bocas title is in the works. So why should Bocas branch out into publishing? Because like all our other projects, it's a small piece of the big puzzle we're trying to assemble, which is a thriving, sustainable literature industry here in the Caribbean, one that contributes to our societies not just intellectually, our writers are already doing that, but economically as well, attracting investment and generating revenue. That requires raising the editorial and production standards of many of the books published locally. So in addition to our own books published under the Bocas Press imprint, we plan to offer commercial, editorial, and production services to those local writers who choose to undertake publication on their own, and to give their books the best possible package, the best possible chance to attract readers at home and abroad. So this brings me back to the OCM Bocas Prize, because like the Writers' Center and like Bocas Press, the prizes we administer are crucial pieces of that big puzzle. They reward writers and publishers. They bring books to the attention of new readers. They also create publishing opportunities. Not a few of the books and writers shortlisted or named winners of the OCM Bocas Prize in recent years have subsequently got publishing deals in new markets, and thanks to the celebrity of the prize. To date, 7 books have been named overall winners of the OCM Bocas Prize, and tonight an 8th book will join their company. In less than a decade, the OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature has come to be recognized as one of the most important literary awards within the region, and for that we must thank One Caribbean Media, sponsors of the prize, who supported this initiative They supported this initiative even before we had a festival. And like OCM, the prize is generally regional, recognizing writers from across the Caribbean and judged by distinguished authors, critics, and publishing professionals. In 2018, OCM Bocas Prize longlist was announced last month, included 6 books in 2 genres in the poetry category. We had Leviticus by Kamal Brathwaite of Barbados, Infidelities by Sonia Farmer of the Bahamas, Mad Woman by Shara McCallum of Jamaica. In the fiction category, If I Had Wings by Helen Clanaris of the Bahamas, Curfew Chronicles by Jennifer Rahim of Trinidad and Tobago, and Tell No One About This by Jacob Ross of Grenada. Would you give them all a huge round of applause? From this excellent long list, our intrepid judges had the task of selecting winners in 2 genre categories, who then went on to form the shortlist for the overall prize. We're delighted that poetry winner Shara McCallum and fiction winner Jennifer Rahim are both here this evening. And I'd like to extend special congratulations to People Tree Press, publishers of both winning books. I think you have a monopoly. They deserve our applause. Jeremy, you've got a monopoly. Tonight, we celebrate those winners. We celebrate all the long-listed authors, and throughout the NGC Bocas Lit Fest, we celebrate the many writers who imagine, persevere, push back the limits of circumstance, and insist on telling their stories in their own voices and on their own terms. Some may win prizes, some perhaps won't, but all of them deserve our respect and our support. Every writer in the audience knows that this is a simple truth. Writing is hard. The journey is long and the road is often paved with disappointments. But without our writers, how do we find the words to describe our past? How do we understand our present? And how do we imagine our possible futures that give our very language back to us, enriched, deepened, and enlarged? We thank them all, and with the keenest anticipation, we look forward to the world-changing books that you're going to keep bringing on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Marina. And I'm sure we all are very happy to see that this festival has grown so immensely over the years. And just to give you a little headache, next year, 2019, is Carifesta. Trinidad and Tobago is hosting Carifesta. So I am certain that Bocas Lit Fest is going to be part of Carifesta. I'm sure of that. So your team has something to look forward to right after your big festival in April. Thank you, Marina. Every year at this event, we hear that those who have furthered the cause of Caribbean literature, those whose behind-the-scenes work makes it possible for writers to thrive and readers to enjoy their extraordinary creations, and the Bocas Lit Fest recognizes them. As you know, the Bocas Lit Fest organization has created various awards and prizes. Last month, the new Johnson and Amoy Achong Caribbean Writers Prize was announced for emerging writers, and on Wednesday, we celebrated this year's 3 winners of Code's Burt Award for Young Adult Literature. All these prizes are judged by juries, but only one award is in the gift of the Bocas Lit Fest. That is the Bocas Henry Swanzy Award for Distinguished Service to Caribbean Letters, which this year is being presented to a woman whose work contributed much to the development of Caribbean literature. Please welcome Program Director of the NGC Bocas Lit Fest, Mr. Nicholas Laughlin, to read the citation for the recipient of the 2018 Bocas Henry Swanzy Award, Mrs. Anne Walmsley.
Right. The Bocas Henry Swanzy Award for Distinguished Service to Caribbean Letters is named for the late BBC radio producer Henry Swanzy, who was born in 1915 and died in 2004. Irish by birth, Swanzy worked as producer of the influential Caribbean Voices program on the BBC World Service from 1946 to 1954, becoming an essential figure in the development of West Indian literature during the decade when it first came to sustained international attention. broadcasting short fiction, poems, and reviews by West Indian writers back to the region, Caribbean Voices helped launch the careers and build the reputations of a generation of authors from across the archipelago, including our two Nobel laureates, the late Derek Walcott and V.S. Naipaul. In 2013, the Bocas Lit Fest established this award in Swansea's memory to honor and celebrate the contributions of the editors, broadcasters, publishers, critics, and others who have shaped the evolution of Caribbean literature behind the scenes. Recipients of the Bocas Henry Swanzy Award are selected by the festival's organizing committee. In previous years, the award was presented to publishers John LaRose and Sarah White of New Beacon Books in 2013, to literary critics Kenneth Ramchand and Gordon Roller in 2014, editor and broadcaster Margaret Busby in 2015, publisher Jeremy Pointing of People Tree Press in 2016, and bookseller Joan Dayal of Paper-Based Bookshop in 2017. This year, we're delighted to present the Bocas Henry Swanzy Award to Anne Walmsley, writer, researcher, former publisher of Longman Caribbean, editor of the landmark anthologies The Sun's Eye and Facing the Sea, and historian of the Caribbean artist movement, known as CAM. Born in the United Kingdom in 1931, Anne began her career in publishing in the 1950s at the renowned house of Faber and Faber in London during T.S. Eliot's final years there. And it was at Faber's, as you'll hear shortly in her own words, that Anne encountered her first book of Caribbean literature. A novel by John Hearne inspired Walmsley to take up a teaching job in Jamaica. And while living there, she traveled around the region to meet firsthand the writers and editors who were producing the great wave of books that we think of today as the golden age of Caribbean literature. On her return to London, her experience and contacts in the Caribbean made Walmsley an ideal choice to join the publishing house of Longmans as their first Caribbean publisher and editor. There she published both new works and reprints of some key earlier titles by Caribbean authors. And her anthology, The Sun's Eye, begun while teaching in Jamaica, had already been accepted by Longmans and joined her early publications. Its title comes from a poem by A.J. Seymour of Guyana, a friend of hers since her visit from Jamaica. The anthology, for use in secondary schools, introduced a generation of young Caribbean readers to the growing literature of their region. She also participated fully in the Caribbean artist movement in London, where her long friendship with the Barbadian poet Kamau Brathwaite began. After retiring from Longmans, Walmsley began formal research into CAM, and her PhD dissertation was published in 1992 as The Caribbean Artist Movement, A Literary and Cultural History, the definitive document of a significant moment in Caribbean cultural history. CAM had introduced Walmsley to Caribbean-born visual artists also. Her focus now shifted from the region's literature to its art, encouraged and guided by Dennis Williams of Guyana. But she never lost track of the writers, especially her beloved poets. In 2009, the University of the West Indies recognized her contributions to Caribbean literature and art with an honorary doctorate bestowed at Mona campus in Jamaica. I don't know why they didn't bestow it here, that would have been nice. And in recent years, Walmsley has donated her unique archive and library, assembled over 6 decades of engagement with the Caribbean, to several university libraries, including the main library at UWE's St. Augustine campus. This will be a rich resource for scholars of future generations, and is yet another act of generosity from one of Caribbean literature's most dedicated and tireless advocates. Although Anne Walmsley could not join us here tonight, in July this year, we will formally present her with the Henry Swanzy Award in London. Meanwhile, let us thank and honor her with our applause.
My lifelong interest in the Caribbean, and particularly its writing, began in the mid-1950s when I was working at the publishers Faber and Faber. I read a proof copy of John Hearne's novel Voices Under the Window, and I was hooked. I decided to seek work in Jamaica, took a teaching job, and explored early West Indian writing by borrowing books from the local library and trying out poems and stories with my pupils. And in the school holidays, I explored the library at Mona, and I found back copies of Bim from Barbados and Kike Overall from Guyana, an absolute treasure trove. And I decided I must meet the editors of both magazines. So I took myself off round the islands and Guyana in April 1961. And in my introduction to Arthur Seymour, I had a real stroke of luck because T.S. Eliot was on holiday in Jamaica before I came out. And when he heard I was going to Guyana, he said, "You must meet my friend Arthur Seymour." So he laid out the red carpet for me. And both editors were very generous in their time and interest, and I learnt much more about the whole region and about its writers, which has really stood me in good stead for all the work I've done ever since. And of course, the difference between the 1960s and now in terms of Caribbean literature is absolutely amazing, unbelievable. I remember Sangsters in Kingston, Jamaica, when I was there, had half a shelf of books of West Indian writing. And now, of course, the books are everywhere, and they're published not only in Britain, but they're published in the West Indies itself, and the readership and the writers just keep on growing and growing. And of course, it's particularly exciting to see how many women writers of real quality, are coming up all the time. And Henry Swanzy, in whose name, in whose memory this prize is given, was somebody I respected hugely. I met him first at a CAM conference in 1968. He read extracts from what he called his ego books, which were personal diaries, which he kept when he was producing Caribbean Voices. His vignettes of writers at that time were absolutely amazing. They were so spot on with how the writers still are. And we became good friends. And I think what I particularly admired about him was his very keen critical intelligence about Caribbean writers and what they wrote, and his great concern for the well-being of the contributors to Caribbean Voices. So it is yet more wonderful for me to get this Henry Swanzy Award because of Henry Swanzy and because of my predecessors, the earlier winners of the prize, who are all such amazing people, and of course because of Bocas and the fact that it's going to be awarded or announced at the annual Lit Fest, and Bocas continues to be a real powerhouse of Caribbean writing. So thank you with all my heart.
Later this year, Anne Walmsley will be presented in London, where she lives, with a special Antiquarian Book Award donated by Mr. Charles Gledhill in London. Ladies and gentlemen, Anne Walmsley, please congratulate her for her wonderful work. All the wide-ranging work undertaken by the Bocas Lit Fest is made possible through sponsorship, and the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago, a founding sponsor in 2011, has been since 2012 the title sponsor of the NGC Bocas Lit Fest. The annual festival, the Children's Festival, and the outreach work of the Bocas Lit Fest are all achieved through committed funding by the National State Enterprise. Many of us will be familiar with his work in steel pan and the promotion of music literacy, and it is wonderful to know that his career has taken him into an organization that is a major supporter of the arts. Let us welcome Mr. Mark Loquan, President of the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago, to bring his address.
Evening, everyone. All protocols observed. I try to shorten things. This gives it away. You know, when I see this festival, you know, we work 24 hours a day on gas and energy and molecules and things like that. And I think this is keeping us grounded. This is keeping us on the earth where we really cherish the talent we have in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean. So it gives me great pleasure to deliver remarks at this key event in the NGC Bocas Lit Fest calendar. Like everyone else present, I feel a certain excitement as we prepare to celebrate writers representing just about the best in Caribbean literature. For yet another year, the NGC Bocas Lit Fest has succeeded in bringing together some of the most prolific and gifted minds to share and explore our respective experiences through writing, storytelling, poetry, and fruitful discussions. I take this opportunity to direct thanks to the sponsor of tonight's award, One Caribbean Media. In the same fashion as we did in NGC, you too recognized early in the game that the NGC Bocas Lit Fest was a solid initiative worthy of corporate support, considering the numerous tangible and intangible benefits to be reaped by our people, both locally and globally. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this year's festival, Island State of Mind, resonates deeply with me. We dream the dream of our cultural faithful that one day we here in Trinidad and Tobago will awaken to the realization that the art we have formed with our hands, the rhythms that we beat out from steel drums, the colors that we write into our poetry, and the talent of our people of Trinidad and Tobago, that's a real riches beyond measure. Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel said, "Without memory, there is no culture." I could not agree more. If we do not proactively preserve and distribute the artifacts of our culture, our music, our books, our craft, how can we realistically expect future generations to remember our greatness? We must remember it first. The Bocas team has made a timely call for Trinidad and Tobago to embrace and validate local. This evening is a celebration of talent native to the Caribbean and is testimony to the treasures we can unearth when we look within. This evening, however, I want to issue a call to action. I believe it is necessary to not simply find and honor these outstanding creations. We must work to ensure these stories reach and inspire. We must push for inclusion of more local and regional titles in school curricula, both at home and in the wider Caribbean. We must seek to market our writers and works internationally as well, not only to grow readership, but to build an economically viable creative industry out of literature. The 14th Caribbean Festival of Arts, CariFesta, being hosted right here in Trinidad and Tobago next year, presents the perfect platform for such dissemination. At NGC, through our CSR program, we propose to continue reaching out in support, endorsement, and partnership to initiatives and projects of this kind. Built upon the foundation of the shared valued concept, NGC social investments place people at the very core with a view of achieving national development. It's one of our 4 pillars that we kind of stand by when we announce to the organization and all our stakeholders. That's what we involve in. We're not going to only focus on securing on gas, but we're also going to focus on contributing nationally to Trinidad and Tobago. That said, I wish to extend congratulations to Ms. Shara McCallum, this year's winner in the poetry category with Mad Woman, and to Ms. Jennifer Rahim, our fiction writer with Curfew Chronicles. Please give another round of applause. I must warmly acknowledge to the remarkable contribution of Dr. Anne Walmsley, our 2018 Bocas Henry Swanzy Awardee. The evening belongs to you as well. We also commend our esteemed adjudication panel who have had the pleasure of selecting the best of the best. By extension, I must also salute Festival Director Ms. Marina Salandi Brown and her team, who ensure that the event runs like a well-oiled machine. We value you as partners as you strive each year to offer top-tier content relevant to our island realities of living and life. In closing, I want to make a personal statement. For a nation, especially a small island state such as Trinidad and Tobago, Reading and the literary arts are the gateways to a wider future. I want to thank the winners tonight who take us on a journey of discovery through their works, reminding us who we are as a people and encouraging us to embrace our diversity. Thank you. NGC looks forward to continuing an exceedingly productive relationship with the Bocas Lit Fest. From all indications, this is a festival that will continue to grow monumentally in years to come, a source of real pride and joy to our people. Congrats again to all authors. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lukwan, and again, thank you, and to you and the National Gas Company for your contribution and continued support. And now, to the presentation of the 2018 OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature. The OCM Bocas Prize has already become a prestigious and coveted prize because it celebrates all English-speaking writers of this region. Mr. Gregory Camejo, Group Executive, Corporate Services of One Caribbean Media, the largest media house in the English-speaking Caribbean and the founding sponsor of the Bocas Lit Fest, will deliver greetings on behalf of OCM.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. All protocols observed. As we assemble here in this historic place, there's a feeling of nostalgia, especially with this event. I have to confess that in preparing a few words to share with you, I found this year I was faced with a challenge that started even last year, but now I'm already confronted with it. Challenge is, what really more can I say? For years, we've lauded the contribution of writers who enter in this conversation, and this year would be no different, because this event is really about writers. I've also said consistently, without fear of contradiction, that the event's founder and her excellent team always seem to find another level to surpass as they fulfill their goals and live their dream and purpose with regards to this entire festival. I've also said many times that the support for the festival and the importance of the festival seems to be a message that's loudly heard globally, and that every year when you come to the festival, you're part of a historical journey that would really truly be understood when the legend of Bocas is told generations from now. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, I've been placed in somewhat of an embarrassing position to have to repeat myself. I must repeat myself because it's a message that is timeless and priceless, and it is a celebration of the past, present, and future prize ceremonies and festivals. I must because it's our responsibility not to take this marvelous gift for granted, and we must uplift every positive experience we have in this world. I wish to sincerely thank every writer, publisher, and reader for sharing a dream, a vision, and an imagination that creates the world that we experience every day. Writers, authors, thank you for the imagination and the energy you use to capture and interpret and share your world with us. Publishers, thank you for giving birth to those ideas. And readers, thank you for making them part of your lives. The one thing I want to emphasize this year is imagination, because it is our imagination that has created so many timeless treasures and created improbable solutions. It is our imagination that will make us an advanced society in the Caribbean, as the Caribbean. The generation of ideas is not always a great brainstorming session with flip chart paper, felt marker, or PowerPoint slides. Imagination involves allowing yourself to see in the mind's eye possibility. It is imagination which is our most natural and valuable resource. It is our imagination which transcends us from one era to another, from one level of civil society to another. So, without imagination, we would not be here today. And without imagination, we can go no further. The imagery of imagination, as I say the word, will vary from person to person. I bet some of you are generating thoughts in your mind right now towards imagination and solutions. This is the very process which makes us all appreciate the greatness of writers. who have been considered for this award, and writers in general. Every single writer who has entered has generated hundreds or maybe even thousands of ideas and visions which will impact on our societies in today's world and also plant the seeds for future imagination. Words that are created from imagination make the world, and that is why OCM recognizes the value of this prize. It is because of the efforts and imagination of all of you that OCM knows that we've made a wise contribution. As we experience an age of unprecedented, rapid technological changes and its impact on our norms and values, it becomes even more important to recognize and harness talent and imagination of our people. This festival and this prize illustrates the best that we have to offer. With that, I want to say words that a former CEO of mine, from what seems like a lifetime ago, always recited to me. It was probably from his school days, I don't know. So friends, I part with these words. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until the good is better and the better is best.
OCM has for 8 years shown its commitment to Caribbean literature through this generous prize and its media support of the NGC Bocas Lit Fest range of projects. A warm applause again for Gregory Camejo and One Caribbean Media. Thank you. This evening, we are in the company of many wonderful writers, teachers of literature, readers, people dedicated to the promotion and support of the literary arts. Their origins are in the Caribbean, North, Central, and South America, the United Kingdom, Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and the Pacific. They would not normally gather here in Trinidad and Tobago, and certainly not all at once. They have been brought together by the NGC Bocas Lit Fest, and this evening by the OCM Bocas Prize. Very soon, we will know who is the overall winner of the 2018 OCM Bocas Prize, but we already have 2 winners. The cross-genre prize is judged by different panels of judges. The chair of each comes together with a head judge to decide on the overall winner from amongst the winning books in each category. The overall winner receives a cash award of $10,000 US, and genre winners receive an award of $3,000 US. The authors and the books in contention this year are Shara McCullum for Mad Woman, a collection of poetry, and Jennifer Rahim for her short collection, Curfew Chronicles. I would like now to invite Shara McCullum to read an excerpt from Mad Woman, the 2018 winner of the OCM Bocas Prize for Poetry.
Good evening. How are you all? I'm really thrilled to be here, and I just want to say a quick thank you as well to Marina, Nicholas, everybody with Bocas for having me here, and especially to Vani, Danielle, and Loretta, whose works I so tremendously admire, and thank you for this honor and for putting me up here tonight. I'll just read 2 poems from Mad Woman. Memory. I bruise the way the most secreted, most tender part of a thigh exposed, purples, then blues. No spit-shine shoes. I'm dirt you can't wash from your feet. Wherever you go, know I'm the wind, accosting the trees, the howling night of your sea. Try to leave me. I'll pin you between a rock and a hard place. We'll hunt you, even as you erase your tracks with the tail ends of your skirt. You think I'm gristle begging to be chewed? No, my love, I'm bone. Rather, the sound bone makes when it snaps. That ditty, lingering in you like ruin. Thank you. And I'll read one more poem, and I don't know if Shivani is here or Opal, but I want to say that they are part of the reason I chose this, and the other part is for my incredible co-conspirator this year, Jennifer Rahim, whose poetry I've long time loved, as well as her book, Curfew Chronicles. So I'm really honored to be here with you tonight, Jennifer. And she said, this is my favorite poem from Mad Woman. So I want to just thank especially Opal and Shivani for their seeing of this poem. I guess I'll say a couple things about it that might help. It's a poem called Mad Woman as Rasta Medusa. And some of us remember the Medusa story, I know, but I have to just tell you one part of it, because sometimes in these retellings of stories we forget essential parts. And the essential part for me is that the reason Medusa became a Gorgon, the reason she became this monster, is because she was raped in the temple of Athena, and this was her punishment. Why she's a Rasta? I've been asked that question a lot. All I can say is the voices come to me the way they come, and I was raised in 12 tribes, so here you have it. Mad Woman as Rasta Medusa. I, woman, got turn all of Babylon to stone. I, woman, is the deliverer and the truth. Look pon I and feel your inside calcify. Look pon I and witness the chasm, the abyss of yourself rupture. Look pon I and know what bring destruction. You say I, woman, is monstrosity, but is your gravelicious ways make I come the way I come? Is your belief everyone exists to satisfy your wantonness? You think all these years gone, I, woman, I come here for revenge? Oh, yo, but is wrong. Again, you're wrong. I, woman, is the reckoning and judgment day. This face, etched with wretchedness, these dreads writhing and hissing misery, is not the terror. I, woman, is what birthed from your terror. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shara. And of course, I would like to now invite Ms. Vani Capildeo, Chair of the Poetry Judging Panel, and herself a prize-winning poet, to present Shara McCullum with her award. The winner of the 2018 OCM Bocas Prize Fiction is Jennifer Rahim, who was previously long-listed in the poetry category of the OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature. May I invite Jennifer Rahim to come to the stage and give us an extract from her piece, Curfew Chronicles.
Wonderful to be here. A lot of thanks, you know who you are. Especially want to just say thanks to Jeremy and his team, Hannah, Jeremy. And I'm reading a short piece from Aura's story. Aura is a partner of a character called Lucky, and she's waiting for him to come back from work on the night of the curfew, and he doesn't turn up. So I'm just reading something of her experience. Wait. Nothing to say as she watched him put on his good dress pants, though it was the bush he was going to show. She watched him trying to decide between the sky blue and the white long-sleeve cotton shirts he reserved for weddings and funerals. In the end, he pulled the blue one over the new merino. She watched him with his hair trimmed close to the skull, the barber's mark still fresh, the clean rag on his shoulder to wipe away sweat, and the black tall tops waiting by the kitchen door, shiny clean. He was ready to go, looking official. No more button-up short pants and dingy t-shirt or vest like he used to wear in the depot. His skin and hair smelling of sun and sea. She watched him drive away in the same van, but now with Lifetime Properties branded on the doors. 9 p.m. curfew time. No van pulled into the yard. No dogs going wild until they heard the familiar whistle that triggered their ecstatic whining. Lucky home. Aura too smiling inside and asking, "You're hungry?" but not waiting for the yes she knew was coming. She dished out whatever she had cooked that day, big portions of everything, though he complained he couldn't eat all that she had piled on his plate. Lucky home. A joy she never stopped feeling even after he took them from the coast, away from her family and friends, far from the light and the breeze she knew as morning, the smell of cocoa tea and roast bakes that were her evenings. But she wasn't afraid to ask her question. "Boy, you know what you're doing?" And although he could not answer, and that she understood, all she would tell herself was that she could wait. She never loved nobody so. Not every change is for the better. Sometimes a change is the very thing that needs changing. That was how Aura saw Lucky's leaving for La Hoquita, a place she had to memorize how to spell. That was where they ended up, living in a sweatbox behind all that wrought iron. But she was bearing up, though her life had boiled down to 4 rooms and a small piece of yard paved over with solid concrete. No problems with weeds, the owner had boasted. But when 12 o'clock sun beat down on the place, Aura swore she was baking in hell self. Whole day 2 fans blowing and nothing green near except what she managed to plant in a few paint pans. Aura held her peace, but thinking all the time of the plot of the coast that was waiting for them to make a return. In that cell of a living room, with the curtains tied back to catch whatever little breeze was passing, she felt more and more what it meant to be outside. The word the coast used for any place that was not there. Belonging wasn't a flag or a birth certificate or a passport. It wasn't even a whole island, but the texture of a place, the way warm sea sand felt underfoot, and how rain played on a roof. It was the timbre of voices passing by where, without seeing a single face, each had a name. Yes, they had found themselves outside. More and more, that absence connected to the absence of the children she always wanted. In the meantime, she had been determined to find a way to make life grow. So, thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah.
Chairperson of the fiction judging panel is academic and literary critic Evelyn O'Callaghan. Please welcome her to the stage to present the prize for Best Fiction.
I'd like to open by saying what an inspiration it is to the other countries in the Caribbean that year after year NGC support this miracle that is Bocas Lit Fest. Oil price up, oil price down, they make our literature stronger. And to OCM, obviously, for the prize itself. And now to that. Those of you who have seen Lorna Goodison, Poet Laureate of Jamaica, and heard her read, will have noticed that I bear a striking resemblance to the writer. Those who do not are very fortunate because the invidious contrast will appear less apparent. Believe me, substituting for Miss Goodison is a tough proposition. That said, since she can't be here, we have spoken at length, and I will try and channel our shared thoughts on this year's OCM Bocas prize judging process. Reading and evaluating this year's submissions, as I'm sure the other judges have found it on previous occasions, has been challenging and surprising in several ways. With regard to the fiction, which is my field, Ken Ramchand's assertion years and years ago that the short story is the original Caribbean literary form seemed to be borne out this year by the number of collections entered. Well over half the total, including all three shortlisted, as well as the judging panel's honourable mention, Leonie Ross's Come Let Us Sing Anyway. The range and scope of the collections, many self-published, made comparison very difficult for the judging panel. Then, the non-fiction panel made history by deciding not to award a prize in that category, upsetting some naturally discouraged entrants. Well, as with other literary prizes, some years there isn't going to be a winner. Yes, the Bocas Prize has to aspire to excellence in its careful stewardship of West Indian writing. But the festival, as we heard from Marina, is about way more than winning prizes. Its mandate is in operation throughout the year, and it is testimony, we felt, to that effort that the creative nonfiction books exist, that they were written, that they're accessible here, as are their authors. Read them and judge for yourselves. In the poetry category, the judges were pleased to see that more international publishers are recognizing the excellence of Caribbean poetry. They considered, however, that self-publication within the region can reflect ingenuity and documentary drive, and they particularly liked that the poetry publishers Ponciana Paper Press and House of Nehezi are actually producing books which are also beautiful objects, art. Hopeful and compelling trends across the entries included an emphasis on ecological awareness, queer desire as an animating force, and a range from technically experimental work to sincere personal memoir of local historical value. A good few of us, of the judges, voiced the crucial need for editorial intervention during the transition from manuscript to book, despite the fact that new technology apparently renders this stage of the process optional. Several works showed real talent, but would have benefited tremendously from editing. We know writers need readers, but an editor might possibly be the most important reader. No matter how beautifully written a book is, it needs structure, it needs pruning, it needs careful checking of language use. And we also thought that it might be worth considering providing feedback on some of the texts, however brief, by the panel, since we've spent all that time reading the books, since the OCM Bocas is, after all, about encouraging, supporting, and improving Caribbean literary art. So much for the judging process. We're here tonight to celebrate this art, and in particular the two finalists, Jennifer Rahim's Curfew Chronicles, which I'll start with. It's a hugely ambitious, intelligent, and original work which makes demands on its readers. It does take a while to grasp the intricately plotted filigree of intersections between the stories and the characters. Identifying itself as a fiction, it could as easily be a novel or a story collection, or both. It's a coherent assemblage of stories that fan out into other stories that fan out into other stories, so that characters that are peripheral in one section are central in another tale. Their perspectives constantly revising our judgments and layering our growing apprehension of the web of relationships, of connections between stories, between people, between thematic concerns. More than one judge noted that the quick cuts and smudged but thick recognizability, that's Vanny's phrase, I love it, smudged but thick recognizability of the characters would make a truly excellent, high-quality TV series, Jennifer, or a film. This is also a profoundly moving work, demonstrating that despite the martyrdom of the good and the banality of evil, people really have heart in this place, and this place is unequivocally Trinidad. It's also an urgent and located call to communal action and to hope, a kind of testament to faith in the possibilities of redemption in these often dysfunctional nation states that we inhabit. Compassion, even for the contract killer, that young man in the rain carrying death on his back, is followed by recognition of links between characters who are, but don't know it, connected. There are philosophical, moral, and religious themes and ideas put forward about the community, and yet are lightly and deftly handled so that at no time does the reader feel browbeaten by dogma. And some of her prose is positively gorgeous. Readers are rewarded by moments of sheer grace and numinous revelations at every turn. Such moments of grace, we felt, direct us to the best in ourselves. There's a moral compass operating in the depiction of the small generosities, the kindness, the goodness, the respect, the small acts of heroism in the midst of despair and disillusionment, as opposed to the crab-in-barrel syndrome, not the what to do recognition. As Lorna wrote, I've been thinking lately about how much we owe the early writers of Caribbean literature, the ones who against all kinds of odds just started to write down our side of the story. They'd probably have been the misfits and outcasts, the ones who did not dismiss the old-time stories told by unlettered people. They were the ones who saw virtue in what others perceived as commonplace, shameful, embarrassing, primitive, unworthy. For the sheer scope of the project, for being able to speak so convincingly on behalf of so many, and for writing a book that acknowledges our better angels, even as it does not look away from the darkness in us. Thanks, Jennifer Rahim. It is calling, she says, for us to look away from the abyss. Shara McCallum's collection of poems is impressively accomplished. The madwoman of the title as recurring theme is interesting and provocative, especially as it gradually becomes apparent that she's an avatar of, I don't know whether to say the author or the literary voice. There's a complexity to this because the madwoman is both mythical, as you heard, or in dialogue with mythical beings like Medusa, Lot's wife, River Mumma, and frankly personal. So she functions as a persona for the expression of personal feelings in a symbolic way, which resonates way beyond the autobiographical. Although the world deals repeatedly with a lost childhood, lost home, desire for an identification with cultural signs that can only be reconstructed in memory or in poems, it doesn't sentimentalize. In general, there's a salutary tension between past and present, between longing and a self-conscious awareness that the past cannot be reclaimed in any concrete way. Quote, "The country of loss was my miscalculated invention." As a collection, the book is various, yet superbly crafted, with no poem seeming out of place. McCallum writes the body in her kinetic poems where the lines move like dancing or running. She works as well in lyrical forms as in linear narrative and fragmentary experiments that surprise by their imaginative leaps. There are conversational poems where the speakers can include the dead, the absent, the near and dear, the real-life aggressor, the imagined beloved, or the feared they. McCallum honours various voices, drawing on several registers of English, including variants of Jamaican Englishes, as you heard, and faces head-on issues of race, colour, class, birth, and displacement, and eventually arrives at a way of accommodating what has given pain, as in her poem Race, where she makes being the whitest black girl you ever saw into a blessing of what all these years you've thought a curse. Her poems are honest about mixity and mixed-racedness, questions which are very pertinent to a large swathe of the global population. It is not always clear, said the judges, whether or how diasporic Caribbean writers are engaging with the tradition, or indeed have awareness of their contemporaries. And in such cases, we would be dubious about awarding a Caribbean regional and international prize, however well crafted the individual or individualistic work. McCallum, however, is a thoroughly engaged and knowledgeable Caribbean diaspora writer. Her poems have the wide range of an experienced author at the height of her abilities in thought, knowledge, and craft, but they can be read by all. Two very, very different books. Which did we choose? I want to end with a few lines from another Caribbean poet, my fellow judge Kai Miller, and it's one of my favorites. A light song of light is not sung in the light. What would be the point? A light song of light swells up in dark times, in wolf times and knife time, in knuckle and blood times. For rendering possible the hope of mercy reign, and for singing against the darkness, the 2018 OCM Bocas Prize for Literature goes to Jennifer Rahim.
I never have many words, you know. But I'm very happy that my my mom is here. My nephew Aaron. I just want to thank them for representing the family. I want to thank particularly, I said before, but Jeremy and Hannah, team at Bocas, at People Tree. When Jeremy saw the book, it was such an amazing experience of writing a book. I hope it will happen again. It was, I experienced that a book is really a community effort. You know, it's never really just the author. It's about the stories that it's telling, but it's also about the production, you know, and there's never a point in the emergence of this book that I was not aware that this book was not mine alone, you know. It was a community effort. So for that I'm grateful. I think it makes me realize that writing is really, it's a service. It's a service one is asked to do, as difficult as it is sometimes, as dark as it is sometimes. And I think Curfew Chronicles allowed me to experience that, and for that I'm very grateful for that text. I'm also grateful for the insight that having to deal with some very, very hurtful experiences in 2011, and of course, I know the country will never forget the loss of Dana Sitahal, which was a kind of a muse, you know, in terms of trying to put that book together. And what I realized when I finished writing, and because I never really knew Dana except as a voice of so much honesty and so much power, and to have lost such a life, and it's not just hers, it's so many lives that we lose, big and small, known and unknown. In a society like ours, it's tragic. But there's a sense in which it forces us to ask ourselves deeper questions about who we are and what we want to live. And I realized in writing the last bit of I hope I'm not talking too long, but I need to say this, the last bit of Curfew Chronicles, I wrote that mercy piece. It's not, it is a fiction asking me about my own fiction. But I realized I was saying that our stories need us. They've done their work when they've been written, but somehow what they're trying to say, they need us to complete them. That was a realization I came to after writing that last piece. So I don't know where that will lead me, but certainly tells me that this art of imagination, this art of story, is for the society, for the community, it's for us. It's our bread. So I'm so extremely grateful and happy, that the book resonated with people and with the judges. Thank you to Marina and her team. And it's just wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you and congratulations again. Of course, we would like to invite Ms. Marina Solandi Brown, yourself, and the sponsor to present the award. And of course, congratulations to all the shortlisted writers and winners in every category for this festival. I would like to now invite Mrs. Rani Lakan Nares, who is the director of the Bocas Lit Fest, to bring her vote of thanks.
Please pardon the protocols. Gratitude is one of the most uplifting of human emotions. And I'm very happy, on behalf of the deeply grateful Board of Directors of the Bocas Lit Fest, the organizers of the OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature, and the NGC Bocas Lit Fest team, to offer this vote of thanks to all involved in this wonderful festival and the occasion this evening. Let me begin with a huge thanks to the judges of the 2018 OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature, Lorna Goodison, Evelyn O'Callaghan, Vani Capildeo, Judy Raymond, Maya Jaggi and Kai Miller, Loretta Collins Klober and Daniel Legros Georges, Jeremy Taylor and Robert Anderson Sandiford for your time and expertise. To Imam Baksh for the lovely reading of Palace of the Peacock. To Charles Gladhill, who donates the Bocas Henry Swanzy Award each year, and to Lucy Hannah and Franca Phillip for the recording of Anne Walmsley, and of course, to our very eloquent MC, Mr. Marlon de Beek. To the publishers, especially Jeremy Pointing of Peepal Tree Press, whose 2 titles won the prizes this year. And booksellers, thank you for your contribution to promoting this prize, the writers and their books. A big thank you from everyone in this room to Mrs. Dawn Thomas and One Caribbean Media, represented this evening by Mr. Gregory Camejo, who make this valuable and generous prize possible, now for the successive 8th year. Maybe we will one day celebrate 50 years like the Man Booker Prize, and show the world that literature is indeed our lifeblood too. Thank you also for the marketing support provided by OCM to keep the public aware of our work. The OCM Bocas Prize ceremony is one event in the larger NGC Bocas Lit Fest, and that is made possible through a cadre of sponsors, chiefly the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago, our title sponsor, whose dedicated and much valued sponsorship makes not only the festival possible, but also much of the Bocas year-round work. Thanks to its president, Mark Loquan, for his kind remarks this evening, and to the NGC team with whom we work constantly, led by Ms. Lisa Burkett. Thank you. Thanks too to the Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts and her staff for the important support for our work. And special thanks to Jason Julian for his strong personal support of the National Poetry Slam, and also to First Citizens, who provide $80,000 in prize money to the winners of the National Poetry Slam, taking place tomorrow evening, and who also contribute to the outreach work that we do. To our other sponsors, Massey Foundation, a huge thank you as well for 8 years of continuous backing, and to UWI's Dr. Heather Cato, Dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Education, for the unbroken partnership and unstinting support. Nothing that we do could succeed without the help of others, and I want to thank all the international program partners, present and former staff of the British Council, Michael Kelleher of the Wyndham Campbell Prizes and Yale University, Alison Donnell of the University of East Anglia and the Caribbean Literary Heritage Project, the Leverhulme Trust, Code of Canada, Writers Centre Norwich, and its International Literature Showcase, Commonwealth Writers, and the Man Booker Prize. Thanks to His Excellency Fernando Schmidt, Ambassador of Chile, for introducing us to Tito and its author, and to Wassa Firi for your contribution to the workshops. Our national program partners, NALIS, for providing the home of the festival, the 2 Cents Movement, the Writers Union, Savant Media and Green Screen for the films, part of the Cinelit, for which I want to thank all the ambassadors of Spain and the Latin American countries taking part in this unique film festival that is part of the NGC Bocas Lit Fest. Our sponsors in kind, Flow, Movie Town, Lonsdale Saatchi and Saatchi, Media and Editorial Projects Limited, MEP, Volunteer Center of Trinidad and Tobago, Angostura, Penguino, Nestle, and Holiday Snacks. What would we do without you? Huge thanks. And of course, the media. You are indeed an important partner. You have proven that you value this festival and has given us such good coverage, for which we are deeply grateful. Special thanks again to OCM, our official media partner. Thanks to Cedric Smart and his team for the sound engineering, to North 11 for visual technical support, to Vincent O'Neill for the live streaming, to Marlon James, festival photographer, graphic designers Melanie Archer and Richard Rollins, festival marketing assistant Stefan Rampasad, and chief blogger Ashley Burnett, and Diane Wells, our events coordinator. Horace, the admired Roman lyric poet and satirist, said, "Don't just think, do." Well, the Bocas Lit Fest team certainly got that message. They work year-round to advance Caribbean literature, and I ask everyone present to applaud the one and only, the indefatigable, the unstoppable Marina Salandi Brown and her Bocas team of Funcho Ayajina, Nicholas Lachlan, Anna Lucy Smith, Marielle Forbes, Malini Joseph, Ariana Herbert, Ardeen Sergiu and Shivani Ramlochan, and the invaluable special team of festival staff and volunteers. and Jean-Claude Counin and the poets of the Two Cents movement. Enormous thanks also to Daniel Dillon, director of the Children's Festival, and Natasha Jones, who is so dedicated to it. We would like to thank all our storytellers and performers who brought literature alive for children all over the country, and His Worship the Mayor of Port of Spain for his generous contribution to the Children's Festival each year. If I have not mentioned anyone by name, please forgive me. You can rest assured that we value every ounce of support and goodwill that we receive, and we certainly count on it every year. Thanks to all of you who come to the festival, who write, who perform, and who contribute to the program to make it so very rich. We hope you continue to do so. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Lacan Nares. And as I wrap up this evening's celebrations, I would just like to do one more presentation, which is Marina presenting to Mrs. O'Callaghan, and then we will do a photo with all the winners and the sponsors, yes?